Up next on his Zapata Brand podcast, Mike Bohn from MMA Junkie.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time! Introducing first, fighting out of the Zapata Brand studio in Berwick, Pennsylvania. He is an expert in boxing and bagels, George Zapata!
And welcome to the Zapata Brand podcast, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, this is a big fight weekend, September 14th, Saturday night at UFC 306 at the Sphere. And my guest is no stranger to combat sports. It's Mike Bohn from MMA Junkie joins us on the podcast. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. Glad we got to finally do this.
Yeah, you know, my brother's been like a stalker with you for the last year or so, and he's trying to get a hold of you. We've been following your content for years, and finally, we get to see you here. Well, you making your debut on this show is not like the debut of combat sports at the Sphere, a $20 million undertaking. What do you know about it, and what can we expect there?
Man, I mean, I know kind of what we've seen and what we've heard from Dana White. They're definitely keeping this very under wraps, like as we go into fight week here. They posted some images of like Dana inside the Sphere the other day. I'm sure you saw those. Some people were, photoshopping John Jones on the big board behind him just to troll Dana a bit. But it looked insane in there, man. Like, of course, it's going to be a spectacular show. I think the UFC, like, they do things like this. They put their best foot forward, and there's no doubt they're doing that. I think in Dana White's mind, given everything he said, this has to deliver, right? In terms of a show on that sense. I don't know how the fights are going to deliver. That's obviously a huge element of that too. And that's always what kind of the X factor is on these UFC cards. You can put anything together you want, but if the fights suck, it really hurts the overall branding of the event. So I think this is a decent card. I think there'll be good action, that kind of stuff. Top 3 fights are great, but yeah, I'm expecting something very unique from the UFC, which is always welcome considering most of their shows look identical no matter where they take place.
Yeah, it definitely unique. We got that point. Let me ask you, they're really putting a lot of Mexican fighters on, some that are not. I think Brandon Moreno is probably the most popular one at this point. But they're putting a lot of Mexican fighters on this show. Do you think this is Dana playing the long game? Meaning, okay, so Canelo's coming to the end here, but Cinco de Mayo and Mexican Independence Day are both the 2 major holidays Mexicans. Do you think he's playing the long game here, where he's going to put on a real spectacular show, and hopefully as Canelo pushes out the door, he comes in there, and this is going to be UFC's Mexican Independence Day weekend?
I think that's definitely the hope. And you could hear him. He actually did an interview with John Morgan, I think after the fight on Saturday, where it just came out like yesterday. And he had said he wants this to be the start of like a yearly thing. It's going to be what he called a 10-pole event, which means something that they kind of do every single year, like in New York or International Fight Week, those things. And he said that he's looking already at options for next year, whether it's going to be in Mexico itself, Texas, somewhere else of that sort, with obviously a heavy influence on that side of things. So yeah, I do think this is a yearly event for them. I don't think it's going to be a yearly event at Sphere, but it's going to be something that they do, I think, every year as part of their schedule until it becomes inconvenient or something else more appealing comes up. But I'd expect to see this for several years to come. Yeah.
Obviously, the financial undertaking is what would hold it to prevent it from the Sphere, only because they're not going to get a windfall like they did at UFC 300 or something like that. They're going to make money. I disagree with the reports that they're poo-pooing on this card being a bust or poo-pooing on the event itself being a bust. Dana White makes money, and he knows how to make money. So his potentially putting on a show every Mexican Independence weekend, I think you're correct in saying the Sphere, but not the Sphere, but do you think it'll be in Las Vegas at those times?
I think it'll just depend. From what Dana was saying in that interview with John Morgan, I think it was kind of like I'm already trying to figure out how to raise the bar here. So I think maybe next year, if he's mentioning Mexico, mentioning Texas, maybe he steps out for a year, 2 years, then comes back to Las Vegas. I think it'll just be like a rotating thing, depending on, whatever venue offers them the most money, these site fees that they get for some shows, whatever just kind of makes sense. An idea that they pop in their mind that works well for a certain region. I think those variables will come in play. I'm certain it'll come back to Vegas one day. Maybe we get at the Sphere one day again too, especially now that they have all the infrastructure done, right? Like the most expensive part of this is getting all the stuff assembled for the first time. But if you can go back and use bits and pieces of things that you've already created, maybe that'll cut down some of the costs for a future show. So a lot of these variables, but I think first and foremost, we're going to have to see how this one unfolds and whether the fans in the venue, the fans at home, and of course the UFC are satisfied with the product given the cost that comes with it.
Now, before we get to the fights that are on the show here, obviously 1 and 2, top two fights, because I think those are the ones that the people are looking at. Do you see Dana at all looking at any superstars in the Mexican descent? Because he's good at building stars, and when you get a star from a different country, smaller country than the United States, obviously, they get the whole backing. Being Mexico so close to the United States too, that you can go either way. You go to California, you can go to Las Vegas and get a big crowd. Do you see anybody coming up down the pipe that Dana is kind of grooming to say this guy is going to be a potential superstar that we can look at?
I think a lot of them are on this card, right? Like Raul Rosas Jr. opening the night. I think he's someone that at still only 19 years old, there's probably a lot of hope that he can grow into something special, but obviously still very green and has a long way to go at bantamweight, which is, in my opinion, the deepest weight class in the sport. So it's kind of hard to evolve and become a name and do all that stuff that it takes to become a true superstar in MMA. Outside of that, I mean, I think Diego Lopez is obviously someone that they're high on right now. And if he wins impressively, he could be fast-tracked into a title shot. I think, obviously, Volkanovski should be fighting the winner of Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria. But right after that, I think Lopez could be next in the queue or in a title eliminator against the winner of Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evlov. Like something like that could be big for him. But of course, the fighter, and I know it's like you're asking about the next generation up and coming people, but this entire thing seemingly hinges on Alexa Grasso right now, right? Like she is the one. They had her as the champion. They had Brandon Moreno as the champion. That would have been the time to go to Mexico right there and do an event with both of them. That window seemingly passed here, and now it's kind of Alexa. I mean, I know Brandon is still relevant. He's got a big main event coming up here in Canada in November, but as far as this card and kind of the next big star in Mexico, it's got to be Alexa Grasso. They're hoping that she continues to succeed. If she wins this fight, and she's someone that you can really go on a big way forward with, because you could make an argument Valentina Shevchenko is her toughest fight in this division, and if she gets through this one, I think the seas open in part for her a little bit more to maybe have a long reign here.
Let's talk about that fight, Alexis Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko. Now, I saw both interviews you had with them. Shevchenko comes off as a stone cold, serious, as just a serious killer in one of those interviews. Doesn't seem to be shaking either way. Alexis Grasso, though, comes off to me as someone who could connect with the fans, and she has that Mexican attitude too, where she'll fight you if you can. Mm-hmm. What do you think? What does she have to do to win this fight to progress? Because is Shevchenko did she just say, Grasso's an easier victory and kind of slip up there? And now she's going to be more serious, because she seemed more serious in the interview that you did with her. She seemed very serious. Or is this something where this is kind of the changing of the guard a little bit?
That's what we're going to find out. You would think it's really hard to tell, right? Because like they fought 9 rounds at this point, and
Shevchenko, the first trilogy, correct? A women's MMA first trilogy.
Yeah, in the UFC, there's been trilogies in women's MMA, but this is the first one where all 3 fights have happened in the UFC, which is obviously historic there too, and 3 in a row and all title fights, and doing this at the highest level. So it's really tough to say, because they fought, like I said, about 9 rounds, and like Valentina Shevchenko has probably won 6 to 7 of those. So it's like, you'd think, but she hasn't got a win yet, right? Like she got submitted in the first fight, and the second fight was a draw. So you'd think she's doing something wrong to some degree. She's not like sealing the deal here. She's fighting well. So I think that's just what she needs, right? She needs to take the good pieces of what she did in the first fight and the second fight. The second fight, you could make the true argument she should have won, right? If there wasn't that crazy 10-8 scorecard from Mike Bell in the 5th round that made it.
Did you think she won? Did you think she won a second? You think she won a second fight? Clearly,
I did. Yeah,
I did too.
Clearly. I mean, it was close. I think it was 3-2. Like it was that close, but she should have won. And rogue 10-8 scorecard made it a draw. So she got the raw end of the deal there. But she needs to look at that fight, look at the first fight before she made a mistake and gave up her back and was submitted, and just take all the good things from those and implement them to her game plan. And I think she's got a very, very good chance here. And if you're Alexa, I think, you look at the good things you did. You haven't lost yet. You knocked her down in the second fight, which was a huge piece of probably people thinking she did win there. She did the most damage in that regard. So
right.
She knows she's got the power to hurt Valentina. She knows she's got the grappling ability to submit her. So she's got to be very, very confident. When I talked to her as well, she's like, I know exactly what I need to do to win this fight. So when you say something like that, you're like, oh shit, okay. What does she know that we don't like? So we'll see what happens there. It's going to be really, really interesting, and doesn't get much more high stakes than this.
Let me ask you a two-part question here. Valentina Shevchenko wins. Where does she go from here? And if Alexa Grasso wins, where does she go from here? Because they're actually almost at like a crossroads for both. Because where else could Shevchenko go? I mean, she really is kind of, done what she can do and stamped her legacy. But Alexis Grasso, there's some growth there. How about Valentina and then Alexis Grasso? Tell me who. When they win, if whoever wins, where do they go? Where's their path next?
Yeah, I think they both want. I talked to them early when this fight was kind of in the works, when The Ultimate Fighter just started airing, so like 3-4 months ago. And I asked them both, like, what do you kind of want to be after this? And they were both very clear. They want fresh blood, and you'd have to think Manon Fiorot is more than deserving of a title shot at 7-0 in the UFC. Natalia Silva was just impressive last weekend against Jessica Andrade. She's 6-0 in the UFC. We have Erin Blanchfield and Rose Namajunas fighting in a main event in November. So like there is a lot going on in this division, and a lot of new fresh faces that are worthy of it. Definitely Manon Fiorot, who will be weighing in as the backup fighter on Friday for this fight in case anything crazy happens. She definitely deserves the shot. But if Valentina wins, people are going to say, well, we're 3 fights in and it's 1-1-1. Are we going to do number 4 like Brandon Moreno and Davidson Figueiredo did? I don't think there's much of an appetite for that from MMA fans, but if it's a robbery decision again or something surprising, a controversial end, who knows? Obviously, Alexa Grasso has the name and the star power and the country behind her, as we've talked about with Mexico. So like she is someone that maybe the UFC wants her to be a champion or in these title fights bad enough that they say, we are going to do number 4. Sorry to everyone else in the division. I hope that's not the case, but we've seen it before. It's entirely possible. So that's definitely in play if Valentina wins. And then if Alexa wins, this book is definitely closed. I don't care if it's a split decision, whatever it is, Valentina slips on a banana peel. We need to move on if Alexa wins. And at that point, you got to go to Manon Fiorot. If she's unavailable, injured, something like that, you got Natalia, you got Rose, you got all these fights. So
yeah, I don't think they'd like to hold the division up much more. I mean,
I think they're over it. I think the fans are over it too, honestly. Like I see the engagement. I mean, I think people respect this fight for what it is. It makes sense for the venue. They did tough. Everything made sense for it, given how the first 2 fights went. But I think a lot of MMA fans are just kind of waiting for this to be over and just want this fight to be done so we can start talking about new business.
Plus, it took a while to get to this third one. It took a little bit.
A year. Yeah, it took a year.
So, well, let's move on to the main event. O'Malley versus Merab. At first, when the fight was signed, I thought Merab's going to win. I think it'll be a tough fight, but I think he'll win if he can get through the first minute or so of that first round. I think that's where he's going to be dangerous. But as I started looking a little bit more, and what shocks me that the odds are what they are too. I didn't know if you agree with the odds with O'Malley being an underdog. I'm leaning towards O'Malley because I really started looking at Merab's last couple fights. When you're fighting a Henry Cejudo and getting clocked like that from a small guy, Henry's small. Sean O'Malley's got something for you, and he's probably one of the best strikers in all of UFC, let alone this division, and he's big. I think O'Malley has an advantage, and I would jump on those odds if I was a betting guy, which I am. So, by the way, I may bet. I think O'Malley has his chance here to really become or stamp his superstardom here Saturday night. What do you think on that one?
Yeah, you couldn't ask for a better position if you're Sean O'Malley to, like you said, have kind of a breakthrough moment there. So I agree with everything you pretty much said there. The line has definitely come a lot closer now. Like it's in some areas getting close to a pick 'em. Marab, Sean a slight favorite. So yeah, this is getting to be very interesting coming to this fight. Of course, the cut made it very interesting, like with Marab.
That was weird.
Weeks ago, yeah, he's kind of given a target. If he splits open early in that fight, everyone's just going to be like, bro, like, are you serious? So yeah, there's a lot of layers.
What was the? Now Marab seems like he's a pretty put together guy. If I'm his trainer, I'm flipping out. Like, what are you doing? That put him
everyone
in a bad
I'm flipping out. That's why, like, we get, I think Dana White is a little too harsh on his fighters sometimes, but we love his brevity and his openness, and he will absolutely say what's on his mind. And when he did that rant a few weeks ago calling Marab next level stupid and his roster like some of the stupidest people in sports, you're like, okay, well, when it comes to something like this, you can't necessarily blame them, because I would be pissed too. He's got so much money sent to the show. He was asked later in the scrum, Dana White, like, if something did happen to this main event, do you have a backup fighter on hold, like to fight Sean O'Malley or whomever? And he was just like, no, like, we're not even thinking about that. Just having to change all the production elements for one of these guys falling out would be millions of dollars. So I understand like why they were scared, why they were annoyed that he posted that. But from the competitive side and the fight itself, yeah, I don't know why you would want to tip your opponent off. I asked Marab about that when I interviewed him last week or the week before, whenever it was, and he was basically I share the highs of my camp, I share the lows of my camp, the good, the bad, and this was something that was bad. It happened over 3 weeks out. It's going to heal in 5 to 6 days, so I don't know why everyone's freaked out. It didn't affect my sparring, it didn't affect my training, etc., etc. So he basically said, like, why are you all freaking out? Because I'm not. So I guess on him, but it definitely adds more intrigue to the fight, adds more layers to it, and I can't wait to see what happens here. Of course, like, I don't think we need an in-depth breakdown on what each guy needs to do. If Marab can't get takedowns with consistency in this fight, he's in deep trouble. And if Sean O'Malley can't stop takedowns with consistency in this fight, he's in deep trouble. I think it's not much more complicated than that.
Well, that's why I was shocked when I initially saw the odds. I mean, everyone I've talked to from that's been as close to the industry as you guys are, they all lean towards O'Malley, and immediately they say it's going to be Sean O'Malley, and without question. That's the one reason why I was shocked. Is Sean's weakness the takedown? Because I thought he did pretty well stopping takedowns. I thought he did very well, even against Peter Yan, which I honestly thought he lost, but he did pretty well. And his striking is next level. Do you feel like that's the only thing that they leaned on to favor Marab in this?
I guess so, but I don't blame them necessarily, considering how effective he's been, right? Like, there's no one that's been able to really stop this takedown train from Marab Dvalishvili, and that's one statistic that you could maybe circle coming into this fight. He has 79 takedowns landed in his UFC career, and the all-time record, which has stood for about 10 years at this point, is George St. Pierre with 90 career takedowns in the UFC. I wonder what the odds would be on for Marab to get 11 takedowns and tie or break that record in this fight, because it's right there for a man. And he shot 49 takedowns against Petr Yan in their fight. The single fight record in the UFC is 21 from Khabib. So, like, I don't know if Marab can get these takedowns as consistently as he wants to or has in the past. Yeah, it could be trouble. And I think Sean O'Malley, he's defended some before. As you said, Yan got him down a bit. Or against Sterling, he was very on point, and he's just going to have to keep refining that. Cheeto barely tried to grapple him, if not at all, which was perplexing. So we just got to see. I'm sure Sean has improved. I'm sure he's competent and capable, but a guy like Merab, who is so freaking relentless, who if you stop the first one, he's coming with the second. You stop the second, he's coming with a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, until he does get you down. It's going to be interesting. If Sean doesn't knock him out in the first couple rounds, his cardio is going to be tested. His ability to chain wrestle and stop those repeat takedown attempts is going to be really tested. So I'm fascinated to see how this goes down.
Are you leaning towards O'Malley?
I haven't made my official prediction yet for the MMA Junkie staff picks. I have until Wednesday, so I've been giving myself a little bit of time, but I don't know. Like, O'Malley's getting to that point. I picked against him a few times here, and he's one of those guys where I'm like, I can't pick against him ever again because he's been doing so well until I see him lose. But I might push that back until after this fight and be like, okay, if he wins this one, then I'm never going to pick against him again. But
you would be one of the first that pick Merab, honestly, that I've spoken to, because most people lean towards O'Malley. But one of the things that you talked about, and I want you to get a little bit more in depth of it, if you can look at it in a fighter perspective, because you're at the arenas, you're there. You spoke about the entire environment that's going to be in that sphere, the lights, the cameras are always there, but the screens, the different angles, the different views. Has any of the fighters ever have any concern at all that this is going to be so totally different and so weird that it throws off their game just a little bit? And as well as anybody, you can't be off a little bit in something on that level.
Yeah.
Have they said anything?
I asked pretty much that question to Alexa Grasso, Valentina, and Merab, and their answers were like, we don't really know what we're getting into. Like, they haven't been in there. They're not going to be able to go in there and do some pad work with their coach a day or two before the fight to get the feel of the arena and what it's going to be like they would at T-Mobile or something. So none of them really knew. And I think Merab probably said it most succinctly, and that whatever I'm going to be dealing with in terms of what's going on outside the cage, Sean O'Malley is going to be dealing with that as well. So it's a fair playing field for all these people, but I don't really know. In that interview I referenced earlier with John Morgan and Dana White, he got asked that too as well, and he was like, no, we're gonna find out on Saturday. We'll see how the fighters speak about it after the fact. So I don't really know. I don't know to what extent it goes to. I know this sounds dark or something, but I hope no one's prone to seizures or anything like that. I couldn't imagine laying on your back or something if you've been taken down and all this crazy stuff is going on the screen. I don't know. These guys and these fighters, girls, are so unique that when they get in there, you hear a lot of them. They're like, I just black out, right? I don't remember anything from the fight, this specific or that specific. So when you get in there and the cage door closes and whatever referee says go, I think a lot of that stuff is not going to matter. They're so good at compartmentalizing and just knowing exactly what is in front of them, and this person trying to kill them, knock them out more or less. It makes it difficult to have other things distract you. So I think they'll be okay, but who knows? No one has the answer to this, I guess, until after we interview the first winner on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's what I would be concerned if I was my fighter, to say, okay, you gotta kind of figure out where, and not having any idea what you're getting into. You're kind of almost fighting in a Star Wars type convention where you have stuff flying all over the place. That would concern me as a fighter itself. So again, that's why I'm not fighting in the UFC. I'm at no level there. But overall, the event itself, is this going to be a plus or a minus for the UFC in terms of take financial and then take what the fans would think about? Not that makes a difference, but financially and then what the fans take out of it. What do you think? Is it a plus? Is it a plus minus?
I think it's going to be a plus, honestly, unless the fight's just bomb and it's a horrible card in terms of action. Then that's hard to recover from, honestly. But I think everything else, like I said earlier, these UFC cards, historically, it doesn't matter if they do 40,000 people in a soccer stadium in Stockholm, Sweden in January, or if they do 18,000 people in Tampa, Florida in December. The product on television pretty much looks identical, right? They don't do much to distinguish it, to make these things feel unique, special, etc., etc. This is going to feel unique and special, and I welcome that anytime they do that. Noche UFC last year, like some of the stuff they did, even just like having mariachi bands playing before the ceremonial weigh-ins happen. You're like, okay, this is fresh. Like it's not the exact same music, the exact same graphics on the screen. It felt a little bit different. So anytime the UFC can try something unique and different, I seriously welcome it, because after doing this for almost 15 years now, like you've just seen the wash, rinse, and repeat element of their production, which you applaud them for. It's the best in the industry by far. And there's a reason they stick with it, because it's so good. But just for someone who covers the sport so closely, it's always nice to see diversity and them mixing it up. So I'm looking forward to that. And I think that's a plus. I think it will be for the people there, for the sport, for the viewers. Anytime the UFC gets to do something first, Dana White like literally feeds off this type of stuff, being first back from COVID, being first to do this event, this place, or this thing. So he's all about this. And when Dana White cares about something with this level of passion and brings in the people that he is to do production and all that, it rarely fails. So I think this is going to be something special on Saturday.
Well, that's this Saturday, September 14th at the Sphere in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mike, let me tell you, I've been trying to get you on for a little bit, and I know my brother's been all over you to try to get on. It has been an absolute honor to get you on here. We've been following your content for a long time. MMA Junkie, even back in the day when it was just on the internet, but now you're there at USA Today. Where can you get a hold of you in social media?
You see some at the bottom there on Instagram, Mike Bohn MMA, on X/Twitter. It's just at Mike Bohn. I have a YouTube channel you can look up that's not very active, but we're trying to get that picked up as time goes on here. And pretty much everywhere else. Of course, my stories pretty much every day, at least one piece goes up on MMA Junkies. So appreciate everyone who consumes the content.
Yeah, and again, I can be one to attest to you have some of the best content in MMA on the net and in your YouTube channel. I just subscribed today, but you're one of the best out there, Mike. Mike Bohn, MMA Junkie. Watch him this Saturday, September 14th. He'll be reporting from there at the Sphere in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mike, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you for having me. Anytime, I'll be back.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.